Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch 2020, our show following all the news and rumors on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. I'm Damon Hatfield, and as always, I'm joined by Jonathan Dornbush, host of IGN's PlayStation podcast, Podcast Beyond.
Beyond. Hey, Damon.
Hello there. And Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked.
Very glad you introduced Jonathan first for once this week.
Yeah, it was time. It's time.
Finally, yeah.
Jonathan's moment. Ladies and gentlemen, we're at a significant turning point here on the show. We started the show earlier this year before we knew many details about either the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series X/S. And here we are on the eve of both consoles launch, and Jonathan and Ryan both have the consoles in their home. They've both been living with them for a while. Jonathan, let's see it. Here it comes. It's a heavy one. Hopefully we don't have to do this too many times. Yeah.
Wow. My goodness.
And then the Xbox Series X is behind Ryan's shoulder.
He's got it right there. This one.
Oh.
Nice. Very cool. After talking about these consoles
they are, yeah.
all year long on the show, we actually have them here in our hands.
Make them kiss.
We're too far away from
each other.
Let me get out of your way.
Give us some time, Damon, please.
Yeah, we just need a few minutes here.
Yeah.
Get to know each other like dogs at the dog park.
I know both Ryan and Jonathan have been putting their respective consoles through the paces, and they'll have reviews coming up in the not too distant future. So be on the lookout for those. But Ryan, let's begin with some Xbox Series X impressions. I believe you were saying, you actually got the actual retail box, and you were saying that the presentation of the console within the box is actually pretty impressive. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, I've been very lucky to be gaming my whole life, and I've been in games media covering games now for, almost 20 years, which makes me feel exceptionally old. But the point is, I've been very lucky to open up and unbox a lot of consoles over that time from all the manufacturers. And I don't know if I've ever been more impressed by just the packaging and presentation of a console than with the Series X. Now, I haven't seen the PS5 proper unboxing. So, no judgment there either way. But when I opened up the Series X and this is after I've been lucky enough to have the preview unit for the last month or so now, but actually opening up the final thing, how people are going to get it when they buy it themselves on November 10th. It's very Apple-like to me. It's presented, laid down sideways and centered in the package. There's like negative space around it. There's this little wrapper around it that just says "Power Your Dreams." It's almost like it's literally gift wrapped for you in a protective kind of film. And then you take that "Power Your Dreams" sleeve off and you unwrap it, and the other accessories, the controller and the batteries and the power cable and the HDMI cable, are just tucked away in another little cardboard sort of area towards the back of the box. And it's just it reminded me of an Apple product. Like, Apple really prides themselves on when you take something out of the box that's an Apple product, it should be beautiful and it should be impressive in and of itself. And the Series X really feels that way too. And I tip my cap to Microsoft because, people are spending $500 on this. It should feel like a premium experience, even from the moment you're opening the box, and it does. So big shout out to the Xbox team. They did a great job with it.
Jonathan, anything of note that PlayStation fans can look forward to unboxing their PS5?
Yes, you can look forward to the PlayStation 5. No, I would definitely say the packaging, based on what Ryan has said, I actually haven't watched the full unboxing on that side either. But the packaging for the PS5, I would best describe it as minimal to kind of get you to what you want in the box as quickly as possible. I think it's all well put together, sort of as you open the top, it's a tray, basically an insert tray of the DualSense controller, the wires you need and the instruction booklets, and then you pull that out and then there's the console. And that is pretty much it. It's very simple. It's very easy to get to everything. There are no sort of really hidden compartments or anything that you're likely to forget something if you're throwing out the box and accidentally leave it in there. It very much feels designed to kind of just get you to the act of playing this thing right away as quickly as possible, rather than a sort of production in and of itself, which is, I think has its own strengths, but it definitely is not like, welcome to your PlayStation 5. Here is what you can experience. It very much is just, here's the stuff you need to play it. Here's the console. And there you go. It's all in, I would say, pretty eco-friendly packaging as well. I noticed everything seems to be pretty easily disposable or recyclable. There's definitely that to it. But no, it's not sort of a like welcome message as you open it or anything of that sort.
Well, you mentioned the DualSense controller, and I keep hearing from a lot of people in the media that have gotten hands-on time with the PlayStation 5 that people seem to be really impressed with this controller, and that it actually is part of the experience that really feels next gen to them. So what's been your sort of experience with the DualSense so far?
Yeah, absolutely. Got one here and can kind of talk about it as I illustrate, but it is one of those things where it really does come down to the senses that it brings into the gameplay experience. I can talk about it specifically within the context of the Cooling Springs level in Astro's Playroom, which is the free pack-in launch game that you'll get for anyone who pre-ordered a PS5. You'll just be able to have that and play that. And it's really designed to show off and showcase all of the aspects of the DualSense. And I think a really notable thing to talk about is there's been a lot of focus on the adaptive triggers and the haptic feedback that is a bit more of an advanced rumble technique. And that stuff is all really, really cool and really well integrated into the level I played. But I do think it's the combination of those and other features within the controller, including the speaker and the touchpad that are both holdovers from the DualShock 4. When all of those things are working together, I think those are the coolest moments where the DualSense most effectively, I guess, tricked my brain into thinking what I was doing on screen was more directly in my hands.
That's interesting. Ryan, can you remind us how the Xbox Series controller stacks up to the DualSense? What features it might match or be missing?
You've got the rumble triggers, which you had on the Xbox One as well, but outside of that, it's it's almost functionally and I mean it is functionally and almost physically identical to the Xbox One controller. There's just some different texture differences on some of the surfaces, and obviously the shape of it's been tweaked ever so slightly, mostly up here at the shoulders. But yeah, it's for better and for worse, it's relatively unchanged. I am of the opinion that to date, I haven't used the DualSense at all, but I think the Xbox One controller is the best controller ever made, specifically the Elite version 2, which obviously is not cheap. But the design of the Xbox controller that they really hit on with the 360 has generally remained unchanged over the last 2 generations because it's a brilliant controller design. And so this is very iterative. But what the nice trade-off to that, and I'd be curious to hear from Jonathan on the DualSense side so far, is battery life. Again, like I've been using this for a month, or at least the very better part of a month. And I've done a lot with it, and I've still got more than half of my battery remaining. And yes, it's just AA batteries, but the battery lasts a long, long time in the Xbox controller. So again, kind of some trade-offs. It's not a lot of new stuff, but it's refined from an already brilliant design, and the battery lasts quite a long time.
Jonathan, can you speak to the battery life of the DualSense?
Yeah, a little bit, especially I think within the context of playing Astros. I'll say for me, just on sort of a like controller scale to give you a sense of where I'm coming from, I prefer the DualShock 4 to the Xbox One, but I think the 360 was my favorite controller of all time before I started using the DualShock. For me, the thumbsticks on the Xbox One were just a little small at launch, but the Elite controller I think definitely surpasses all of them. That said, I really like the feel of the DualSense. It feels pretty firm, and there's like a nice heft to it, but not too much overbearing or anything compared to the sort of light DualShock 4. I will say battery life wise with Astro, in terms of that game is really using in that level in particular. You're using the DualSense a lot. There's a lot of haptic feedback going on, whether it's feeling the sensation of your character going through water or a sandstorm, or the spring of your character's jumping suit that you get a little bit halfway through the level. There is a lot going on. You have to use the controller, the microphone a few times. You have to hear a lot of things. You don't have to, but you hear a lot through the speaker. There is a lot going on, but it didn't, destroy the controller's battery life. It has lasted me longer in a play session than the DualShock 4 did. And even something like Astro, where it is very much using all facets of the controller, and I presume that's a bit more of a drain on the battery life. I haven't noticed a, dramatic time down in using the controller, especially compared to the DualShock, which at this point I'm I recharge my DualShocks almost every day.
Okay, let's do a quick hit some shorter, smaller news stories that broke this week. Ryan, Xbox has confirmed that every game playable on the Xbox One, from the original Xbox to 360 and the one itself, will also work on Series X and Series S. And that comes after, 500,000 hours of backwards compatibility testing.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Even Rock Band 4, yes. Wow. So happy that my music craving, my pretend rock craving can live on for another generation, and all the hundreds of dollars of DLC that I have for that game. The bottom line here, of course, Microsoft has been, we've talked about it on this show over the past year. Microsoft has been the leader in making compatibility a normal thing, and helping to preserve game history and not locking things to old consoles, and that's fantastic. And Sony is now doing a lot more of that as well. And it's just great to see Microsoft normalize this. This is now going to be an expected normal thing in this generation that we're about to start, and subsequent generations too. So yeah, again, a tip of the cap to the Xbox compatibility team. I went up and did an interview piece, more than that. It was a big profile piece on them a couple of years ago, when they were just doing original Xbox backward compatibility, when they were adding those handful of OG Xbox games, and really embedding with that team for a day. It was pretty cool to just listen to them and talk to them about how much they care about this stuff. And we're seeing the results of that really come to bear now as we head into the Xbox Series generation. Of just everything works, and that's how it should be, and that's awesome that's how it's going to be moving forward.
And for those wondering, 500,000 hours is 57 years. So definitely putting the backwards compatibility through the paces for Xbox Series X and S. But now, Jonathan, one of a key selling point that PlayStation has over Xbox is that they have a VR, a whole VR experience on PlayStation 4 and moving forward with PS5. Apparently, there's a free adapter that you need to use your PSVR on PS5. How is that going to work?
So actually, as we're recording this week, they finally announced the way to get this free adapter, because they obviously didn't want to have to charge people for a product they said was going to be backward compatible. So you're able to enter some information for your PSVR headset onto a form online, and they'll be able to ship you out an adapter. I know there have been some issues with the website as it first launched. They probably maybe weren't expecting as many people to rush it immediately, but this has been a really big lingering question mark, because actually in one of the earliest PS5 news stories that we got when they first talked about it, they confirmed PSVR backward compatibility all the way back then. So this has been something that, obviously there are over 100 million PS4s out there. Only a tenth or so of the user base has PSVR headsets, but that's still a sizable enough chunk, and the PSVR community is very dedicated. So it's good to see it will transfer forward. It is unfortunately just something you need to go out of your way to have to get this adapter to make sure it works.
Got it. Now, Sony hasn't made any announcements about PSVR 2. I don't think they've announced any PS5 exclusive VR games. What do you sort of expect Sony's plans for PSVR in the future will be, and how serious do you think they're going to take it as we move into next gen?
I don't think they would be trying to make PSVR games backward compatible if they weren't also thinking about continuing their investment in VR. PSVR is an interesting thing where I feel like we hear about it from Sony, really a concerted effort for maybe about 6 or so months, and then it kind of goes quiet for a bit, and then it comes back. We sort of get waves of really interesting PSVR games. I think right now, they were very focused on getting the PS5 out the door. There's a lot of first-party games at the launch of this, and this was also a huge year for just Sony first-party developers outside of the PS5 with Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima, Dreams, and more. So I think trying to add PSVR 2 on top of that would have just been a little too much and a little too unwieldy in terms of splitting the fan base's attention. So I think we will get an evolution of the PSVR. We've seen some patents when it comes to advanced controls that make it a little bit more like some of the PC offerings. And I think we will get there. It's just more of a launch of the system wasn't the best time to make that happen. And so that is something we'll probably get a little bit more down the line.
Got it. Okay, we have the results of last week's poll, which was what quality of life hardware feature is most important to you for the next generation of consoles. Options were things like heat output, the form factor size, even the ability for cockroaches to make your console their home. It's a long story, but a funny one. But the far and away, the clear leader was noise output, with almost 62% of respondents saying that was the quality of life feature that's most important to them. Ryan has already let us know earlier that so far his time with the Xbox Series X has been pretty quiet. Jonathan, how loud or quiet is the PlayStation 5 so far?
So I can really only talk about it, unfortunately, right now within that level's context in Astros. I will say, while playing that level, I did not hear my PS5 whatsoever.
Got it.
But it's definitely, I think those poll results totally make sense when you consider how many PS4s are out there and how many decibels of volume each one probably produces in everyone's homes, and how sick we are of that. And obviously Sony is quite aware of that. Otherwise we wouldn't have such a big fan in the PS5.
Yeah. The teardown video that Sony released earlier gave us a good look at all that. Okay, before we go, we've got 2 new polls for you to vote on for next week. One for Xbox fans, one for PlayStation fans. We want to know, what's your favorite controller of all time within your ecosystem? So on Xbox, you've got the Duke, the 360 controller, and the Elite. And then on PlayStation, you've got things like the PS1 controller, the first DualShock, the 6-axis. Ryan, you had already said that the Elite controller is your favorite controller of all time. And then I think, Jonathan, you also revealed earlier in the show that the DualShock 4 is your favorite of all time.
Yes, correct.
I am curious to see how many Duke fans represent in that poll, because I know they're going to be out there.
Yeah. It was a beast of a controller. So viewers, make sure you vote in one or both at IGN.com, and we will share the results of those with you next week. And that will do it for...
The Duke controller should be the PS5 controller. They're both huge. They just pair perfectly. Let's make that happen.
It's good. Third-party manufacturers, make a Duke controller for the PlayStation 5. Make it happen. That's going to do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. We'll be back next Friday, 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern, with more news and rumors on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Thank you to Jonathan. Thank you to Ryan. My name is Damon. We'll see you next week.